Once upon a time, there was a young man named Obinna, who lived in a small village called Umuahia. Obinna was a hardworking boy, but life was very hard for him. When he was just 12 years old, something terrible happened. His parents died in a car accident. It was the saddest day of his life. Obinna loved his parents so much, and suddenly, they were gone. After the accident, everything changed. With no parents to take care of him, Obinna's relatives didn't want to keep him for long. They sent him to live with his uncle, a man who was not kind at all. His uncle made Obinna do all the house chores and treated him badly. Every day, Obinna would wake up before the sun came out to fetch water from the stream, sweep the compound, and even cook food. But his uncle would still complain that Obinna wasn't working hard enough. Even with all these struggles, Obinna had big dreams. He wanted to become a successful businessman so he could take care of himself and help others who were suffering. He believed deep down that his life would change one day. He just had to keep pushing. Obinna managed to finish secondary school, but it wasn't easy. He did small jobs like cutting grass for people, helping on their farms, and sometimes washing cars to earn a little money. His dream was to go to the big city and make something of his life. So, one day, with the little money he saved up, he packed his few belongings and traveled to Lagos, a city full of opportunities. When Obinna arrived in Lagos, he quickly realized that life there was not as easy as he had imagined. He had no family, no friends, and no money. The city was full of people struggling, just like him. He found a small room to stay in and started working in a local restaurant, serving food and washing dishes just to pay for his rent and feed himself. Life was hard, but Obinna didn't give up. He still held on to his dream of becoming a successful businessman. One evening, while working at the restaurant, Obinna met a girl named Amaka. She was beautiful, kind, and full of life. She came to eat at the restaurant often, and soon, they became good friends. They would sit and talk about their hopes and dreams. Amaka was always there to encourage Obinna when he felt down, telling him that everything would get better soon. Obinna enjoyed spending time with her, and in his heart, he hoped that maybe they could be more than just friends. Obinna and Chisom's relationship blossomed quickly. Even though Obinna didn't have much, he gave Chisom everything he could. He helped her pay her rent when she couldn't afford it, supported her small business selling clothes in the market, and even gave up some of his own opportunities just to make sure she was okay. Obinna believed their love was strong, and in his heart he saw a future where they would build a life together. At first, Chisom seemed very thankful. She would smile and tell Obinna, "You are the best. I don't know what I would do without you." Hearing this made Obinna happy. He felt proud to take care of her and hoped that their love would only grow stronger. But over time, things started to change. Chisom began to depend more and more on Obinna's generosity. One day, she asked him for help again. This time, it wasn't just for her rent or business. She needed money to buy a new phone. Obinna didn't have the money at that moment, but Chisom looked at him with sad eyes, saying, "Obinna, you know I need this. Please help me. I'll pay you back, I promise." Obinna thought about it for a while. He didn't want to disappoint her, so he gave her the little money he had saved, hoping she would be happy. As time passed, Chisom's requests grew bigger. She wanted new clothes, more money for her business, and even expensive things like jewelry. Obinna started to feel the pressure. He was giving up his own dreams and plans just to make sure Chisom was happy. His friends and family noticed and began to worry about him. One evening, Obinna's close friend, Amaka, pulled him aside and said, "Obinna, you are doing too much for this girl. Are you sure she's not just using you? You've been sacrificing everything for her." Obinna shook his head, refusing to listen. "No, Amaka. Chisom loves me. She's just going through a hard time. I know things will get better." Even his auntie warned him, "Obinna, love is good, but don't lose yourself in the process. Don't give up everything for someone who may not be giving the same in return." But Obinna was blinded by love. He couldn't see what others saw. In his mind, he believed that all his sacrifices were worth it. He told himself, "If I just keep helping her, everything will work out in the end. She will see how much I care, and we will build a good life together." But deep down, there were moments of doubt. Sometimes, Obinna would lie awake at night, thinking about the opportunities he had missed. He had a chance to take a good job in a bigger company, but he turned it down because it would take him away from Chisom. He thought about how he couldn't save money for himself because he was always giving it to her. Still, he pushed those thoughts away, hoping that their love was enough. As Chisom's business began to grow, thanks to Obinna's constant support, she started to change. At first, it was small things that Obinna didn't pay much attention to. She stopped answering his calls as quickly as before, sometimes not even replying for hours. When they finally met, she seemed distracted, always looking at her phone or talking about how busy she was with her business. Obinna smiled and told himself, "She's just working hard. I'm happy that her business is doing well." But soon things got worse. Chisom stopped appreciating the little things Obinna did for her. Before, she would thank him for even the smallest help, like carrying her bags or buying her food. Now, she barely noticed. When Obinna would give her money or offer to help, she just said, "Oh, thanks," without really looking at him. It felt strange, but Obinna tried to ignore it. One day, Obinna went to visit Chisom at her shop. She was busy, as usual, talking to customers and counting her sales. But there was something different. A tall, well-dressed man was standing beside her, laughing and chatting with her like they were close friends. Obinna didn't think much of it at first, but as he watched, he noticed how Chisom's face lit up when she talked to the man. She looked so happy, more than she ever did when she was with Obinna. When the man finally left, Obinna asked, "Who was that?" Chisom smiled and shrugged. "Oh, that's just Mr. Kalu. He's a businessperson. He's been helping me with some deals." "No big deal." Obinna nodded, trusting her. "Okay, I'm happy you're doing well." But from that day, things became even more different. Chisom started making excuses whenever Obinna wanted to see her. "I'm too busy," she would say. Or, "I have a meeting with Mr. Kalu, I can't make it today." She would cancel their plans last minute, leaving Obinna feeling confused and lonely. Slowly, Obinna began to notice other small signs. Chisom started dressing differently, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry that Obinna knew she couldn't afford on her own. She also began avoiding serious conversations about their future together. Whenever Obinna brought it up, Chisom would quickly change the topic or brush him off with, "Let's talk about that later." Obinna's friends saw what was happening. Emeka, his close friend, pulled him aside one day and said, "Obinna, I don't like the way things are going. Chisom is changing. Are you sure she's not seeing someone else?" But Obinna refused to believe it. "No, she's just focused on her business. I trust her. She would never do that to me." Obinna tried to push away the doubts in his heart, but the signs were there. Chisom was becoming more distant, more secretive. The love they once shared seemed to be slipping away, and Obinna didn't know how to hold on to it. He wanted to believe that everything would be fine, that their love would survive. But deep down, he could feel something wasn't right. One day, Obinna was walking through the market when he saw something that made his heart stop. There, just a few steps ahead, was Chisom. She was laughing, her hand lightly resting on the arm of another man, a tall, well-dressed guy who was obviously not Mr. Kalu. Obinna's heart sank as he watched them. They looked so comfortable together, like they had known each other for a long time. At first, Obinna tried to calm himself. Maybe it's just a business meeting. Maybe he's another customer or friend, he thought, trying to ignore the heavy feeling in his chest. But deep down, he couldn't shake the fear that something was wrong. He knew Chisom had been distant, but he never expected to see her like this, with another man. That night, Obinna couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying what he had seen. The way she smiled at the man, the way they walked so close together. He had to know the truth. The next day, he decided to confront her, hoping for reassurance. Maybe she would explain everything, and it would all be a big misunderstanding. When he finally saw her, Obinna tried to stay calm. "Chisom, I saw you yesterday, with that man." "Who is he?" he asked, his voice shaky but full of hope. Chisom looked at him, her face completely expressionless. "Oh, him? That's just Tony. He's a friend." Obinna breathed a small sigh of relief, but something in her tone didn't feel right. "Chisom, what about us? I thought we were building something together." For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a cold detachment that cut through Obinna like a knife, Chisom said, "Obinna, You've been such a good friend to me. You've always been there when I needed help, and I appreciate everything you've done. But I never saw us like that." Obinna stood there, frozen in disbelief. Friend? Was that all he was to her? After everything he had done for her, the sacrifices he made, the dreams he built around them, she saw him as just a friend? "Chisom, I thought you loved me. I thought we had something special," Obinna said, his voice barely a whisper, his heart shattering into a million pieces. But Chisom didn't even blink. She just shrugged and said, "Obinna, I never made any promises. He's just a friend." Those words echoed in Obinna's mind over and over again. Just a friend. How could she say that after all the time they spent together? After he gave up everything for her? After he poured his heart into their relationship? The next few days were the worst in Obinna's life. Everywhere he went, he heard people talking about Chisom and her new man, Tony. She was moving on confidently, telling everyone that Obinna was just a friend who had helped her out during tough times. She made it sound like he was nothing more than a kind neighbor, someone who had simply done a favor. The public humiliation crushed Obinna's spirit. In their small community, where everyone knew each other, people began whispering behind his back. "Did you hear about Obinna? He thought she loved him, but she was just using him," they would say. The shame was unbearable. It felt like every eye was on him, judging him for being so foolish, for giving everything to a woman who never saw him the way he saw her. Obinna's world fell apart. The emotional pain was too much to bear, and his finances were in ruins. All the money he had given to Chisom, all the time and energy he spent trying to build a future with her, had been for nothing. His dreams of a life together, of marriage, of raising a family, crushed in an instant. Now, as Obinna sat alone in his small room, the weight of his heartbreak felt too heavy. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved, the woman he had sacrificed so much for, had dismissed him like a stranger. The future he had imagined was gone, leaving him with nothing but memories of a love that was never real. Months passed, but Obinna couldn't move on. Every morning, he woke up with the same emptiness in his heart. He had poured so much into Chisom, his time, his energy, his money, that without her, his life felt hollow. His business, once full of promise, had suffered greatly. The money he had invested in Chisom's business, the opportunities he gave up for her, left him struggling to make ends meet. The little shop he ran was barely surviving, and each day felt like a reminder of how much he had lost. Obinna's friends noticed the change in him. He was no longer the cheerful, hopeful person they once knew. Emeka, his closest friend, often came to visit, trying to lift his spirits. "Obinna, you have to let her go. It's not worth your peace of mind. Chisom has moved on, and so should you," Emeka would say. But no matter how hard they tried, Obinna couldn't escape the pain. The betrayal cut too deep. He had given everything for Chisom, believing in a future with her. Now, that future was gone, and all he was left with were memories and regrets. At night, he would lie awake, thinking about how he had trusted her, how he had ignored all the signs. He couldn't help but wonder what he had done wrong, why all his love and sacrifices weren't enough. As the months dragged on, Obinna found it difficult to focus on his goals. His dream of expanding his business seemed far away now. He had no energy left to pursue it. Trusting people again felt impossible. If someone like Chisom, who he had loved so deeply, could betray him, then how could he ever open his heart again? Everywhere he turned, it seemed like life was a never-ending struggle. His heart was heavy with disappointment, and the future looked bleak. But one evening, as he sat alone in his small room, Obinna began to reflect on everything. Slowly, he realized something important. He had loved Chisom with all his heart, but his love had not been mutual. He had given and given, but she had never truly given back. It wasn't just about the money or the time, it was about respect and care. Love, he thought, is supposed to be shared equally. It should be about lifting each other up, not one person sacrificing everything while the other takes. As these thoughts filled his mind, Obinna began to see the truth. He had lost sight of his own worth. In trying so hard to please Chisom, he had forgotten that love should never come at the cost of self-respect. One-sided sacrifice, he now knew, often leads to heartache. It wasn't wrong for him to give, but it was wrong for him to give without receiving the same love and care in return. Obinna's heart still hurt, and the road ahead was long. But he knew that he had to rebuild his life, not for anyone else, but for himself. He would take things one step at a time, slowly healing and regaining the trust in himself that he had lost. He promised himself that in the future, he would love wisely. He would remember that his happiness mattered too and that true love should never make him feel small or forgotten. And so, Obinna's journey taught him a lasting lesson. Love is not about losing yourself in someone else's world. It's about building a world together. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away, when the love you give is no longer appreciated. But also, a new beginning. Moral of the story, true love should be mutual. One-sided sacrifice often leads to heartache. Value yourself, and don't lose sight of your worth, even in love. Thank you for watching this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, I want to hear from you. What did you learn from Obinna's journey? What part of the story touched your heart the most? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to share this story with your friends and family. Your support means the world to me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more stories like this. Thanks again for being part of this journey, and I can't wait to read your thoughts.
Hi.